Hello everybody, welcome back to John's Comic Corner, where we're going to talk a little bit about Marvel Comics and where to start. A lot of times people ask me as the resident comic book nerd in a lot of my friend groups, John, how do I get into comics? It's an insane world, it's a whole thing, I don't know where to start because there's like a million different issues, all by different authors, which one is good, which one is bad, which one is canon, which one isn't. And so I thought I'd put this video together to add to the bunches of other videos on YouTube about sort of, where to start when we're talking about comics. As you can see, I've switched to the other side of my bookshelf today because we're going to be talking about Marvel. Now, as you can see as well, we've got some gaps here because we're going to be talking about some of the books that I think are a good sort of jumping off point when it comes to the world of the Marvel Universe, especially if you're a fan of the movies. As we've talked about before on the channel, Marvel is just more of a touchstone for people. The movies are very prevalent, the characters are already in the cultural zeitgeist, and so let's just jump into it. Now, as a fan of the Avengers, they're sort of, the Justice League, the A-team of the Marvel Universe. I think a great place to jump off from is The New Avengers by Brian Michael Bendis. It's a great comic book. As you can see, this is a Marvel Select edition. I would recommend, I haven't read them all, but if you're looking for a place to start, usually on Amazon, there's the Marvel Select series. That's like Marvel's basically saying, hey, this is a good place to start. This is a great contained story. This is also the jumping off point for a few. You can see I have a couple of the volumes here. Basically, the Avengers are coming back together. They had been fractured at some point. Not like Civil War, that came a little bit later than this, but they were fractured, and Iron Man and Captain America are basically like, we want to get the Avengers back together. So it's sort of like a getting the band back together, but also there's some crazy shenanigans going on regarding the Sentry and a couple other villains that are popping up. It's an interesting team roster. We've got standards like Iron Man, Captain America, Spider-Man, but also we've got the Wolverine joining. We've got Spider-Woman. They're trying to get Daredevil on board. It's a very interesting team. The art is by David Finch, who's just incredible. He's got incredible art. I always give these, the whole run is really good. The first volume in particular is really excellent. And there's some other, I would say, 5-star books within the run. So if you're looking for just, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty with one specific character. I'm looking for a great team book. The New Avengers, Brian Michael Bendis is great. So that is a good jumping off point if you're looking just for an Avengers fix. Moving over to everyone's favorite surgeon/wizard, Doctor Strange. Now, Doctor Strange, The Oath, it's a great self-contained sort of story. It doesn't concern the wider Marvel Universe necessarily. It's by Brian K. Vaughan, who's a great author. I think he really understands the character. We have some art that's very, it looks very nice. It's kind of reminiscent of sort of older Marvel comics, which I think really suits the style of Doctor Strange. We see Doctor Strange squaring off against an old foe, trying to solve, it says, an attempted murder, his own. So there's a bit of a mystery here. We have some classic, just goofy Marvel magic that Doctor Strange is taking part in. I believe it also has a great scene where he has to perform surgery, but he's using magic to do so, which I think is a great twist on the character. This is a great jumping off point for Doctor Strange. I'm a big fan of, as you can see here, Jason Aaron's run. I don't know if that's necessarily a great place to start. That's also a good run that I'm a fan of. Maybe people disagree with that, I'm not sure. But I think if you're gonna start anywhere, Doctor Strange The Oath is a great, like I said, self-contained story. You don't have to know much going in. Even if you're just a fan of the movie, the character in the movies, this is a great place to start. Guardians of the Galaxy, everyone's favorite losers from space. Now, I'm a real personal favorite of the Abnett and Lanning run. It's super complicated and it's crazy and it's a massive saga throughout space. I don't know if that's necessarily the best place to start. I do have just the run here. here. I've tried to lend it to friends, and it's just like super dense to get into. If you like that, if you like a cosmic narrative, a large saga that's a piece of a big cosmic puzzle in the Marvel Universe, that's a great place to start. But I would recommend, again, we're going to go to Brian Michael Bendis a few times. He was just a big, really influential author at Marvel during the 2000s, sort of into the 2010s. But he did a run on the Guardians of the Galaxy right as the movie was coming out. So we see a team very similar to the movie. In the Abnett and Lanning run, you've got just a roster of the Guardians of the Galaxy moving in and out. People leave, people come in. This one is very set in stone. What's very interesting is that Iron Man is a key member, which is very fun to see Iron Man sort of banter with Quill and Gamora and Drax and Rocket and Groot. It's a really fun space adventure. You deal a lot with Peter Quill and his heritage. For those that don't know, Peter Quill is not the son of a Celestial like in the movies. He's sort of royalty from another planet, and you get to see him dealing with the ramifications of being royalty and not knowing really that he was royalty, and growing up with that, and the consequences of being the heir to a throne of another planet while he's also part of a super team. So the art's very cool. Stephen McNiven does great work here. Brian Michael Bendis, once again, I mean, some people might say he's hit or miss. I think he really can get the characters here and give a really fun story. So this is a great jumping off point. Once again, if you're not looking for that crazy cosmic sort of complexity, this is a really simple and fun time, sort of like the movie. So I think the movie took a lot of cues from this, or maybe vice versa. So this is a good place to start as well. Now, if you've seen the Hawkeye show on Disney Plus, this comic was sort of the basis of that show. Now, that show sees Clint Barton and Kate Bishop coming together to solve a mystery and take down the Kingpin. This sort of takes that idea and I think runs with it a little bit more. We've got Kate Bishop, who is the up-and-coming Hawkeye. We have Clint Barton, who returns. He's divorced. He is kind of down on his luck. He buys an apartment building and he's trying to protect the people in this apartment building while also train Kate Bishop. There's a lot going on here. There's not one simple, I guess, through line, but there's some great art. Matt Fraction, known for a lot of other stories, really delivers a great saga, as it's called, the Saga of Barton and Bishop. So this is just one. You can get basically the whole story in one binding. I'll put it in the description where you can get it, and the issues as well if you're reading digitally. So this is a great story. I know Hawkeye's sort of a really underrated hero in the Marvel Universe, even in the movies, but what I love about comics is we can really take an obscure hero and take an artist and an author who really cares and just make something really special with that character. And this story it's really light and it's fun, but there's some gritty elements to it, and it spans the nation even, and you get a little bit of Kate Bishop, you get a little bit of Clint Barton, and it's just a really fun time. So this is definitely worth sinking your time into if you're a fan of the Purple Archer. I don't know, I couldn't think of another pseudonym for him. Moving on. Another obscure one coming from Matt Fraction, we've got the Immortal Iron Fist. Now, Iron Fist did have a Netflix series. Most people are pretty mid on it. This story, that Netflix story is somewhat based on this run here. I believe in the show he has to go to a tournament where he has to fight the immortal, I don't know, what are they? The immortal chosen people of each different kingdom, and Iron Fist represents Kunlun, the city that he sort of lives in, that only appears every 7 years or so. I guess he doesn't live in it, but he visits it more than you should be able to if it only appears every 7 years. The art's really cool. It's Matt Fraction working with Ed Brubaker, who's another great artist, or another great author. So Once again, you also find out that there's been multiple Iron Fists throughout history, and he learns about them and learns about sort of the history of the Iron Fist, the legacy of what it means to be the Iron Fist. You see Luke Cage, he appears. You see Misty Knight, she appears. All the people that the Netflix show was building up, you see them in here in really interesting ways. So this is a great collection of the Immortal Iron Fist. Definitely worth looking into. Once again, more of an obscure, I guess, character. Not a lot of limelight has been cast on Iron Fist, but this is a great book to begin there as well. Now, probably 30 years ago, Iron Man was like nothing to really get excited about. But the movies really have made Iron Man something so big in the eyes of fans and viewers of the MCU. That's not to say he hasn't had great runs. I would just say he wasn't probably as popular as he has become nowadays. Iron Man Extremis, however you say it, is the basis of Iron Man 3, which most people would say wasn't the greatest Iron Man movie. This comic is really incredible though. We've got Warren Ellis, superstar writer Warren Ellis, and Adi Granov, I think is how you pronounce it. Great artist. I think Adi Granov created this look for Iron Man, which is what we see in the movies. Before Iron Man, I mean, if you look at pictures of Iron Man, he just looks like a normal superhero that they've just made his outfit look a little more shiny. Whereas this, they've really gone into that technological aspect. It is an Iron Man. It's almost a mech that he's piloting, and so that was translated very well into the movies. The art is very, I don't know, it's very awesome, as you can see here. Very cinematic storytelling. Delves into Tony Stark, delves into his legacy as like an arms manufacturer, but also these criminals who show up with this extremist virus that let them like vomit flames out onto people. Unfortunately, Guy Pearce isn't here, or maybe he is, but he doesn't look like Guy Pearce. Whatever, it's a great comic. Once again, Marvel Select. It's got the stamp of approval from Marvel. What are you waiting for? If you're an Iron Man fan, this is essential. A lot of people have probably seen Kid Nova around. If you've seen any of like the animated Spider-Man movies, I think Marvel was trying to push him a little bit more in the early 2010s. I say Kid Nova because there's two Novas in the Marvel Universe. There's Richard Rider, who is an incredible character in his own right. He's got his own series, as you can see over here. I'm a huge fan of it. Once again, it's similar to the Abnett and Lanning Guardians of the Galaxy, though. It's a big cosmic story, so maybe that's just for a whole nother video. We can talk about the 2009 Abnett and Lanning Infinity Thanos Imperative Saga, but I think a great jumping off point is Nova by Jeff Loeb. The authors have kind of come in and out on this run, but it's a very fun tale of just a kid whose dad used to be part of the Nova Corps, and his dad has gone missing, and the kid finds the Nova helmet and he puts it on, and all of a sudden he's thrown into this cosmic adventure where all of a sudden he can fly, but he's also dealing with like a mom who's about to lose her house and a little sister and making friends at school. It takes what is great about Richard Rider, who's just like a normal Nova, and now we have like a kid who just likes skateboarding and hanging out with his friends, but he thinks it's really cool that now he's this cosmic superhero. It's a really great blending of that classic Marvel relatability, and it's just a fun series. I don't think there's nothing crazy serious, though it does tie into some incredible crossovers throughout the years. This is a great story if you're just looking for a fun time. I don't own this book because it's super expensive. So unless you have a lot of money to drop, or if you can read it digitally, Spider-Man Blue is a great Spider-Man comic. It is basically continuity free. You have Spider-Man on the anniversary of Gwen Stacy's death dictating to like a little microphone audio recorder just his memories of his early days as Spider-Man, getting to know Gwen Stacy, getting to know Mary Jane, fighting some villains, and sort of learning the ropes as Spider-Man. It's by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. They're just a superstar author-artist team up. The art has that kind of really awesome 60s art style, but with a new spin on it that Tim Sale can pull off in a way that no one else really does. It's a great comic book. Like I said, it's largely continuity free. It's all about that golden age of Spider-Man. If you're a fan of Spider-Man, this is really essential reading. I've been trying to track it down, but it's always like $100+ everywhere I see it. But if you can get a hold of it, it is a great book to start with. Now, I think going maybe the opposite direction, we've got Spider-Man Life Story. Once again, this is very self-contained. It's almost a what-if story of Spider-Man. It's not connected at all to the Marvel Universe. It's basically like Spider-Man appears in 1962, it says here, and then ages in real time. So the first chapter is the 60s, where you see like Spider-Man meeting Captain America in the 60s, and he's gaining his powers. And then it jumps to the 70s, and things have changed a little bit. Peter's a little bit older. It jumps to the 80s. He's now like a 30, almost 40-year-old Spider-Man. He's a grown man who's trying to figure out, his love life, saving New York as Spider-Man. He meets Miles Morales sort of in the 90s into the 2000s, and it ends, he's sort of an old man working with Miles Morales, and it's such an interesting look at the legacy of Spider-Man throughout the years, as if, what if it did play out in real time? How would that look? What would that be like? So it's by Chip Zdarsky. Him and Matt Fraction have done a lot of great work together. I know we've mentioned Matt Fraction a lot, but Mark Bagley, another incredible Spider-Man artist. This is, once again, self-contained. It's not necessarily, it might be if you're more familiar with Spider-Man and tired of the same old stories, this is a really fun twist on it. So this is a great thing to give a look at. For Thor, I don't know. Thor to some people, it seems like, he's like a weird Shakespearean mythological character. We have like Thor Ragnarok, which made him really funny, which I enjoyed. But then you get into like Thor Love and Thunder, and I feel like they've lost the grasp on the character. Thor Love and Thunder did introduce the God Butcher, Gore the God Butcher, which is an incredible character who was incredibly squandered in the movies, in my opinion. Maybe y'all liked it, that's fine. I super hated it. But the comic Thor the God Butcher and Thor God Bomb, they're sequels to each other. First one, second one. It is incredible writing. It really makes Gore the God Butcher a very formidable and frightening villain to Thor himself. You see Thor as a young man before he has the hammer, interacting with Gore, finding that fear in his heart. You see present day Thor grappling with this villain again, and you even get a picture of like an alternate reality future Thor who's now the king of Asgard, and they have to and he's also still battling this fear of Gore and the influence of Gore, and you see all of this sort of coming to a head. There's some time travel involved. It's an incredible story, both of them. There's moments, this is probably my favorite Marvel comic ever, perhaps, I don't know. Thor the God Butcher and Thor God Bomb, they're sequels to each other. Jason Aaron does incredible work. He did like a whole 10-year Thor run based off this. You can start here and just read that 10-year run. It's also got Esad Ribic? No, probably not that. His art is very, as you can see, it's almost painted. The covers are incredible, but the interiors are a little more consistent with what you'd expect from comic book art. He adds a real mythological element, an epic element to the art and the storytelling, and these books are just second to none. Really, if you're a fan of Thor, get into it. The Vision, right? The robot dude, the android dude. You wouldn't think he'd have a super compelling solo story, but Tom King delivers. I'm a big fan of a lot of Tom King's work. I think the quality of his work has dropped off in recent years, but The Vision is it's an incredible story, but it is super grim. The Vision basically builds himself a family, a wife, a daughter, a son, and a little dog, and they're just trying to live life in the suburbs, and he just wants to provide a normal life for his weird android family. Forget about Scarlet Witch, Who was she? He's moved on. He's got his new robot family. He's trying to teach them what real normal life is, but it just doesn't really work out super well. And it gets super grim, and it's incredible. The art is very interesting. It's very tense. I would say it's probably not for the lighthearted, but if you're interested in sort of a grim take on the vision and the implications of artificial life and what that means and can they coexist with us, this is a pretty great book. Once again, it's not for the lighthearted, so just warning, I guess. Going back in the day, jumping off the hype of Deadpool Wolverine, I guess, we've got Wolverine by Chris Claremont and Frank Miller, two legends in the industry. This just collects their run on Wolverine. It is actually the Wolverine from, I think, 2014 is largely based on this. He goes to Japan. He falls in love with a woman in Japan whose father does not agree with, I guess, her lifestyle, her wanting to be married to Logan. It's got incredible Frank Miller art, I would say, before he went crazy. He's fighting the Foot Clan, which... No, sorry, that's from Ninja Turtles. He's fighting the Hand, the Ninja Clan. Usually Daredevil's fighting them, but he's like fighting them, Wolverine's fighting them on their home turf in Japan. It's real old school, but like I said, incredible art. It's got that brown and tan outfit, which is one of my favorite Wolverines. I mean, this is a classic just panel of Wolverine himself. I mean, if you're a fan of Wolverine, this is a great, I don't know if, you could definitely jump off from the 80s here, but this is just a great grounding in the character and a good time. So now, if we jump over to the X-Men just at large, we've got The Astonishing X-Men by Joss Whedon, director of The Avengers. I mean, whatever you think about him now, he had a really decent X-Men run back in the day. It gets rid of some of the staples you might think and gives us a really interesting team. We have Cyclops leading the team, which has always been a staple. You really get to see Cyclops flex his like leadership skills. That doesn't make any sense. But he's often, I think, portrayed as a pretty boring character. He just has laser vision, I guess. Sorry, it's a concussive blast, I know. But he's like leading the team. Beast is there. Kitty Pryde is there, Wolverine's on it, Emma Frost, she's there, she's kissing Cyclops, they're together, because who's Jean? She's dead, who cares? Once again, it's one of the few comics where Cyclops isn't just yelling Jean all the time. Also, Colossus makes an appearance, and he's one of my favorites. So, the first 4 issues of this run were all Whedon, and they are more or less pretty contained. I think it switches authors at a later time and maybe drops off quality, but the whole Whedon run on The Astonishing X-Men is a pretty good time. And if you're a fan of X-Men and you're looking for something a little bit new, I guess it's old, but a little bit newer than what you've seen in the movies, hot off, the death of the Fox X-Men universe with Deadpool and Wolverine sort of heralding that in. This is a great book too. Lastly, I just wanted to throw out a few sort of books that contain the full Marvel universe. If you're really looking for an amazing, like, Infinity War style event that contains a bunch of characters, these are some great books to go with. Secret Invasion. Obviously, there was a Disney Plus series, which is just an awful idea. This is like Infinity War, Civil War level event. To think you could just do it in a Disney Plus series makes no sense to me. But basically, it's similar premise though. The Skrulls, the shape-shifting aliens, they show up on Earth and they start impersonating everybody, and none of the Avengers know who they can trust. So if you like that sort of thriller aspect, the mystery aspect, who's who can trust who, this is a great book to go with. Once again, Brian Michael Bendis, Lino Francis Yu does incredible art. Just an all-around great time. If you thought the show was lackluster, this is the way to go. Alright, and I mean, you saw it coming. Civil War. I mean, the movie is really great. The comic book is also very great. They're both very different stories. I mean, there is a superhero registration act. It's not a Sokovia situation in the book. Basically, some young hotshot heroes end up getting killed, and it gets a bunch of innocent people killed as well. And it prompts the US government or the powers that be to start thinking about, why do we let these superheroes run rampant, causing all sorts of collateral damage? And the teams are more or less the same in the sense, it's Captain America versus Iron Man. Spider-Man is a major part of it. You see every characters we didn't see in the movies, who couldn't have been in the Civil War movie, make an appearance here. You get to see which side they're on. I think if you've seen the movie and you want to go a little bit more in depth and see what the X-Men were doing perhaps in the Civil War universe, or in that time frame, this is a great book to start. I've lent this to a lot of friends. The art is Steve McNiven. Once again, it's Mark Millar, notable author of Kingsman, Kick-Ass, all sorts of just things that have been made into movies. So it's a great book. I mean, I don't think I've said anything new, but it's definitely worth getting into. I wonder if this will be controversial. I'm not sure. Original Sin, okay? The Watcher. You know him, the big guy, literally big head on the moon. He watches everything. He ends up dead. Someone shot him. And Nick Fury shows up and he's like, what the heck? Let's get as many heroes as I can to figure out who did this. What is really interesting about this book, not only is it a very interesting mystery story about who shot the Watcher, you see some very fun team-ups. Nick Fury's teaming people up like Gamora and the Winter Soldier, the Punisher and Doctor Strange. There's some really... It's also a celebration of comics in the sense that there's some goofiness that shows up. There's this hero called the Orb. His head is just an eyeball. But it says that he's a Z-list supervillain, which I think is funny. It's a little self-aware in that way. Maybe that's weird to even mention. But once again, Jason Aaron, incredible work. Mike Deodato, incredible art. It's a very serious book, but it's got that intrigue that you're looking for in sort of a murder mystery. But yeah, that's basically it. Like I said, I'm gonna put all the links to these books, at least the Amazon links, in the descriptions down there. I'll put the issues that are contained in each book in the description as well, if you're reading online, if you need to check it out that way. But let me know what you think. I know these probably aren't great jumping off points. Like I said, I'm operating on the basis that people basically know who a lot of these Marvel characters are. But if you've got any suggestions, throw it in the comments, because as much as I like to think I know a lot about comics, there's always someone who knows more than me. So throw it in the comments. We'll get a good discussion going down there. Anyways, we'll catch you next time. See you later in the DC video. Bye-bye.